So, Drunk History, Castlevania.
Drunk History, Castlevania.
I got everything in here. I got it covered. I did the whole freaking history of Castlevania. Alright, so let's get started. First thing first, a few disclaimers. First of all, this is sort of impossible. There are a lot of contradictory story points. Like, for instance, Trevor is supposed to be Simon Belmont's grandfather, but there are 200 years between them.
That is kind of, yeah, they have long lifespans in ancient...
Yeah, they have kids in their 70s, is what that suggests, which is insane. Also, Dracula is supposed to come back every 100 years based on some weird prophecy, but that's sort of just random. I mean, he comes back whenever the story necessitates he comes back. Like, it's not really realistic. He comes back every 100 years. He just shows up whenever the story needs him to come back.
You're right. You would think, if you were a Belmont born in an off year, you'd be like, all right, I don't...
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to kick back this year. Sweet.
That's not my problem.
Second of all, there's canon versus non-canon material. So Kid Dracula and Captain N are not part of this thing.
Captain N, the less said the better, too. That was the most negative representation of Simon Belmont you can imagine.
But is there like a more 90s show than Captain N? Like, that was just that's such a moment in history for everybody. So what follows is my best attempt to capture all the games in a consistent timeline. All right, so there's it's a drinking game kind of experience. We're Drunk History. Really, the only rule is drink whenever a castle crumbles.
Oh boy!
If you play Castlevania, this happens a lot.
Every single time. He must have been 100 years rebuilding the castle, right? He must be like.
I feel bad for the castle at some point.
It's like. Okay, it's fixed. I'm ready. Okay, let's invite the Belmonts back.
All right. So some initial groundwork. This is sort of the baseline before the games start. There is a Crimson Stone and Ebony Stone. I don't know much about them. People are trying to create the Philosopher's Stone. That's why I have the picture of Harry Potter there. I don't know why the Philosopher's Stone is so important, but by accident they created these other two stones. The significance here is you combine these two stones, you get eternal life. I don't know. These are the rules, arbitrary rules Castlevania dreamed up. I'll allow it to happen, whatever. Okay. The Grim Reaper shows up. He gets the Ebony Stone, takes it to Walter Bernard, who's a vampire. And that's kind of where the stories pick up. Walter Bernard, the vampire, has the Ebony Stone, his buddy with the Grim Reaper. Okay.
All right. Mentioned Sandra Bernard. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the very first game in the series is Castlevania Lament of Innocence on the PS2 in 1094 AD. Leon Belmont, in the bottom left there, and Matthias Kronkvist. They're fighting the Crusades together. Randomly, Matthias loses his wife. She dies when he comes back from Crusade. She found out she's died. He goes off and goes into like this really just depressive coma for a while and sleeps for a while. So Leon continues to fight for the Crusades until these monsters show up in the Crusades. They start fighting weird monsters. The church doesn't know what to do. Leon's fiancée, Sarah, goes missing. Then Matthias, from his kind of bedridden coma, wakes up and tells Leon, hey buddy, I know where Sarah is. Walter Bernard, in the bottom right there, has captured your fiancé. He's a local vampire. He's behind all these monsters showing up. Go after that guy. And that's where the story picks up.
And that's Lament of Sorrow, or Lament of Innocence. Okay.
There's more to come. Hold on. This is a big game. Let me tell you why. So what happens is Leon goes after Sarah, gets her back from Walter. She's been bitten by Walter, so she's going to turn into a vampire. So Leon takes Sarah to alchemist Ronaldo Gandolfini. Says, I got an idea for Sarah. She's going to turn into a vampire either way. So let's kill her with your whip. Because as Ronaldo says, Sarah had part of Walter in her. And so, because she's been bitten. And so if they can kill her with the whip, the whip would then turn into a vampire killing device. The vampire killer whip.
Okay.
So,
but I don't like this is some weird science here, but okay, yeah.
Apparently in the game, Leon beats his wife to death with a whip.
Wow.
And that's how the vampire killer whip becomes into existence. That's how you get the whip that kills all the vampires in the future.
Wow. Okay, so he beats her to death and he gets a whip out of it.
Correct.
Wow. That's one of those parts in the game you should just turn the game off. Like, okay, no, I'm not. It's like, press A to beat your fiancé. No, I'm not pressing A.
Alright, so what happens here is that after he gets the vampire killer whip, Leon storms the castle and immediately defeats Walter. Not a big deal. Death shows up. He's been hiding in the chamber room and kind of reveals he's been the big bad behind the whole thing. And then Matthias, your friend from the beginning of the game who's been in bedridden the entire time, appears as well. So Matthias, apparently after his wife was killed, Elizabeth was killed, was the name of the wife, he cursed God for everything that happened. And he said his best way to get back at God was to get eternal life. And so Matthias has all the ingredients to have eternal life. And basically he flies away, turns into Dracula, and takes off. You fight Death, I think the last boss of the game, and then at the end of the game, Leon leans into the camera, you see in the bottom right, and says the prophecy that the Belmont clan will hunt the night and fight you forever. And the punchline here is the castle crumbles as you walk out, so you gotta drink.
Alright, here we go.
So then going forward, the 12th through the 14th centuries, Matthias really officially becomes Dracula. He falls in love with local village doctor Lisa. Together, Lisa and Matthias or Dracula have Alucard, of course, is a big player later on. Lisa, the doctor, gets accused of being a witch and burned at the stake. I almost said something else. Gets burned at the stake. But before she gets burned in the bottom, I think it's a scene from Symphony of Night, she tells Alucard not to hate human. Alright, so next in the line is Castlevania Legends on the Game Boy in 1450 AD. This is a story of Sonia Belmont. So Dracula shows up again, new castle. Along the way, she runs into Alucard in the castle, and then she goes on to kill Dracula. But reality is, all she ends up doing is kills Matthias, not really Dracula's spirit. So Dracula Prime...
Okay.
Yeah, hold on. Dracula Prime is still coming.
Matthias was Dracula, she killed Matthias, but not Dracula.
Correct.
Alright, that makes sense.
You got it. And the important part is...
Yes, of course.
And then Sonia gives birth to Trevor Belmont, who's a big deal. Apparently, Trevor's father is Alucard. So even though she met Alucard in the castle and fought him and beat him, they kind of get together afterwards. Alright, so the next game in the series is Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse on the Nintendo.
Great game.
26 years in the future. So, the story of Trevor Belmont, who again, whose father is probably Alucard. Dracula's come back, he's killing everybody again. Of course, the church doesn't like this very much, so they ask Trevor to help out. Who Dracula, before this game starts, has frozen, or has taken over Grant's dynasty. He's a freedom fighter. He's taken him over and corrupted him to make him fight for Dracula. He's frozen Sifia Belnades in stone. Sifia Belnades is, of course, very important later on. The Belnades name shows up later on in the series, but you meet her for the first time here. And, of course, Alucard is back once again trying to stop his dad from being such a killer. Punchline, of course, castle crumbles. Afterwards, Sifia and Trevor marry, and Alucard goes off to sleep for 300 years. So the next title on the list is Castlevania Curse of Darkness on the PS2, 1479. A weird freaking title. A weird account of Hector and Isaac. So former Dracula employee Hector was a forge master for Dracula. I don't know what forge master means, but he was one.
Okay.
He leaves Dracula's employee before Dracula gets killed by Trevor. After he leaves, Hector's wife gets killed. So his buddy Isaac is trying to force Hector to come back to become a great forge master. Really, Death, again, Dracula's buddy, is behind this whole thing. Hector gets there, confronts Isaac for killing his wife. He doesn't opt to kill Isaac after all. Hector refuses, so Death instead just decides to kill Isaac randomly, which brings Dracula back. And Hector kills Dracula.
What the hell is Isaac wearing? I mean, he's got high heels.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I'm not sure if he's struggling with the loss of his wife or just his own personal issues.
Yeah,
but
there's like a deeper story here that they're hinting at, but they, we're.
And of course, as Hector destroys Dracula, the castle again crumbles. Moving forward in the time frame, we're now 100 years in the future, looking at Castlevania: The Adventure. And so there's some controversy here. There is Castlevania: The Adventure for sure on the Game Boy. Some sites reported there's an arcade version of this. I couldn't find that, so I had a picture of it and I got rid of it. I just put an X over it. I'm not sure if it's right or not. I think the arcade game is really based on the Nintendo game later on, but some people say there is a Castlevania Adventure for the arcade. I'll leave this. It's open for controversy. I'll leave it at that. So Dracula's back. He's been in the penalty box for 100 years. So based on the prophecy, so his first move is to immediately kidnap Christopher Belmont's wife. Christopher Belmont, of course, suits up with a vampire killer whip, goes after Dracula. Dracula immediately realizes this is a bad move. Christopher puts him down. Christopher takes down Dracula. Castle crumbles again.
Oh god. Okay. That is a terrible picture of Christopher. It's very provocative looking, really. It's like, this is what you think of Dracula, yeah.
In the next game, Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge, also in the Game Boy, just 15 years after the previous game, is about Chris and his son, Salil. So at this point, Salil is 15 years old. Christopher has decided he's now ready to become the vampire hunter. He's going to bless him with the vampire killer whip. Dracula, apparently in the previous game, actually escaped as Mist. So Dracula comes back and crashes their little whip party and takes over Salil's mind. Our four castles appear over the lake nearby. That's kind of the point of the game. Chris suits up, goes after the four castles, each of which have their own little boss. And, Christopher goes and fights Dracula a second time. And a second time, Dracula loses. Christopher kills Dracula, rescues his son, and the castle again crumbles.
Do you have to fight the son? Did it say anything about that during the...
I don't know. I would imagine so. This is a very common theme that somebody gets kidnapped or mentally taken over by Dracula and you have to fight the person until the curse is lifted off that person.
Yeah, give the whip up of killing your wife and then bring that for sure, because you're going to need that.
The Belmonts are a noble clan. So.
Yes, yeah.
Alright, so the next one on the list is actually the original Castlevania on NES. About 100 years later, 1691 AD, it's a long time later. Chris is there, Simon Belmont takes up the vampire killer whip. Very straightforward story. Death is a second in command. Dracula is Dracula's buddy, as we know. Dracula loses the fight, but of course curses Simon before he dies. And there was one surprising thing I learned as I researched this game. Basically, Super Castlevania 4 is just a remake of the original Castlevania.
Oh, okay.
There's no original storyline, there's no original story. Super Castlevania 4, there's nothing unique about it. It's Simon fighting Dracula, it's the same time frame, it's the same story, just told over again. So, as much as that game, as impressive as the game is, and it is really impressive, it's just Castlevania 1 all over again.
That's so interesting. I really think of Castlevania 4 as Super Castlevania as being like the best of the series. Like for all the games we've had, as much as I've liked like Lords of Shadow, that I thought was probably still the best Castlevania game we've seen.
Of course, at the end,
yes.
you can see it on the left side. And this is weird. Like they have weird names in there: Zombie Joan Candies, Hero Simon Belmondo. Like I forgot they did this, but yeah, they had these weird kind of tongue-in-cheek credits for.
Yeah, good
so
games.
moving forward 7 years to Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest. Dracula cursed him before he died. And basically the curse was, your wounds from this battle will not heal after you fight me. So he's advised by some random person, I forgot who it is, maybe you know. Do you remember?
The instruction manual, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So he's advised by some random person to sacrifice Dracula's remaining body parts around the world to stop the curse. When he burns the Fang, that actually brings Dracula back. Simon has to put him down again. But by doing this the right way, the curse is lifted, the good ending. Remarkably, this game does not have a crumbling castle, so you're off the hook this time.
Hey, all right. The curse being lifted, you getting the good ending was all a matter of time, right? You had to get there. If you finished the game quick enough, you got the good ending. If it took
I think that's right.
Yeah, because remember, when we played through it, we got the bad ending because we took too long.
You have the whole thing about, like, you had to kneel by the wall to work to the other area, and...
That was the crappiest thing in the world. No one would ever think to do that. We had to hold a red gem and kneel by, I think, a wall. So you'd have a tornado come pick you up. That kind of thing was just designed to make you call a tip line or look in a magazine. Yeah, such a random thing to do.
God, tip lines, man, they need to come back. That'd be amazing. I skipped around. This is going to be 50 years later after Simon's Quest. Simon's saved. He's good to go. Simon's grandson, Justy, or Just, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. It's a guy. It's a guy.
I think it's pronounced Juiced.
Juice. Let's go with Juice. His friend, Lighty Erlanger, is
we should call it Lighty the Strangler.
Kidnapped, taken to the recently appeared Dracula castle.
Oh,
so
boy.
Juice and his friend Maxim go in to fight the castle and then rescue Lighty the Strangler. It turns out that Maxim's got a split personality, and that's what the harmony and dissonance line comes from. What happens is Maxim's kind of selfish personality over Juice gets corrupted by Dracula, who takes over that part of him. So you have this like Fight Club kind of moment where Maxim in his dark side is like resurrecting Dracula, but his light side has no awareness of what's happening. between Maxim, Lighty, the Strangler, and Juice, they all kind of band together. The castle actually vanishes into the mist. It doesn't crumble, it vanishes into the mist. But Juice saves the day, rescues Maxim, rescues Lighty, everybody gets away. So, the next one takes place 50 years after that. Rondo of Blood is a game that I think nobody played on the PC. I think it showed up on several consoles afterwards, like Sega Genesis and stuff. This story follows a Dark Priest Shaft.
Wow.
I've never heard of Shaft at all in the Castlevania series, I guess. But Shaft is a Dark Priest. He resurrects Dracula, and together, Shaft and Dracula steal all the women from a nearby town.
Wow, that does sound like a plot to a Shaft movie.
I'll leave it at that. Richter Belmont, I guess, is the hero this time. He suits up to go rescue the women. But after they kill Dracula, Richter is kind of broken down and in his weak condition. Shaft is able to enter Richter.
Ooh, okay.
Spiritually.
Spiritually speaking? Okay, yeah.
Spiritually speaking. But Richter's a big deal. So, Richter's a really big deal simply because of the next game. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So Richter is the bad guy of Symphony of the Night. So he's been now possessed by Shaft from the previous game. So then Alucard from Castlevania 3 awakens from his 300-year sleep, as I talked about.
Yeah.
He comes back. So 300 years later, he shows up. 1797, here we go. Shaft, introduces Dracula's true castle, which is just an inverse of the first one.
Okay.
So
like
Symphony of the
Halo.
Night. Was that?
Like Halo, it just you kind of just go back to the same levels again, just back.
Exactly, and people don't seem to mind, like Halo. So, so Alucard goes into the secondary castle, which is just a reverse of the first one, collecting the body parts of Dracula, and he uses that to resurrect Dracula for real this time. And then Alucard fights his father in the final battle of the secondary castle and wins the fight. Before he kills Dracula, he quotes his mom, Lisa, from the beginning of the game, beginning of the series, and telling him not to hate human. So Alucard, after the fight's over, goes back to sleep, but Maria Renard decides to tag along with him, go to sleep with Alucard.
So you can do that?
I guess.
Okay.
So it's like Cocoon or something. I don't know what's going on, but they can go in there and hang out together. Richter, after this game's over, disappears. He's a little bit embarrassed about being the bad guy, being corrupted by Dracula and all that stuff. So he kind of takes off, and he gives the vampire killer whip, his ancestor's legacy, to his younger sister. Introducing Circle of Moon on the Game Boy 1830. It's about 40 or 50 years later. Countess Carmilla, I never played this game, apparently just decides on a whim to resurrect Dracula. It's time for it to happen.
Okay, can't get a break, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then Maurice Baldwin, who you heard about in this previous slide, whose adopted son Nathan and real son Hugh try to stop her from doing this. So Maurice is kind of like a survivalist kind of guy. He's trained Nathan and his real son to be fighters and stuff. So they, all three of them, the father and the two sons, go in to try to stop Carmilla. They get there too late. Maurice ends up getting captured by Carmilla, and Carmilla then splits up the two sons. So, Nathan Grave, the offspring of Richter's sister, you play as him. So you gotta fight Hugh along the way. You do this, you kind of release Hugh from the spell, and then you go after Dracula and you kill Dracula.
Yeah, Castle Crumbles, yeah.
Castle Crumbles.
Well, it's been a while, really.
I know, right?
They should really call that Belmont Peak. It's like, you know,
exactly.
where the Belmonts go to watch the castle crumble.
So the castle crumbles. Nathan, after this is over, Nathan returns the whip to his cousin. He's not part of the Graves family. He's actually more in line with the Belmonts. So Nathan gives his son back to more of a Belmont lineage. Michael's son, Reinhardt, leaves to train in the Carpathian Mountains. And so Michael, in the meantime, while his son's away, has a priest seal up the whip in their nearby town. So now we're 30 years later, Castlevania Legacy of Darkness on Nintendo 64. So the Triumvirate, Evil Triumvirate, Death, Sorceress Actries, and Vampire Gilles de Rais band together to bring Dracula back. In the process, they steal a young girl from a nearby village, Ada, and then local werewolf, your protagonist, Cornell, returns to his village to find out Ada's gone missing. He thinks of her as his adopted sister. There's kind of a twist coming up about why that is. So then Cornell is your hero. He goes off, kills absolutely everyone, rescues Ada, but in the process, as a red, he has to sacrifice his werewolf ability to do that. The twist at the end of the game is that you learn that Ada was the last survivor of a village that Cornell's werewolf clan attacked. And so when she survived, he decided to protect her forever.
This originally was supposed to be part of the Castlevania 64 game, but they couldn't get this part finished fast enough, so they released it as a separate game. But in the original if I remember right, Castlevania 64 was supposed to have like several characters you could play as, and the werewolf was supposed to be one of them.
Well, hey, good news for you. Just a few years later in the series, Castlevania 64, yes, and I put a warning up there, this one is complicated. Because you're right, there are a lot of different characters in this story. So a few years later, Dracula's back once again, 100 Years Prophecy, totally irrelevant, shows up whenever the story needs him to show up. So he's back again, he's killing people in the town. Reinhard Schneider, as I talked about earlier, he's back from the Carpathian Mountains now from training, and he gets the Vampire Killer Whip and goes in. Carrie Belmonts, again that name, Sophia's ancestor from Castlevania 3, she's fighting too, because she lost her foster mother, Dracula's killed her town, she's gone in as well. So Reinhardt's in there, Carrie's in there, and then Holy Knight Henry, the third playable character, who was rescued in Legacy of Darkness as well, is also there to help. So there's 3 different protagonists in this game. So, along the way, the 3 of them run across orphan boy Malice in the castle. His parents were killed by Dracula, presumably. He's a big deal in the story. So, the result of this story, turns out Carrie killed Dracula's, I don't know, sidekick or whatever, but Malice turns out to be the real Dracula. Yeah. Also, along the way, the castle falls.
Good, yes.
So, afterwards, Reinhardt and Rosa, the vampire gardener, get married together. They leave for Ireland, change their names to Morris. Their grandson, John Morris, is actually part of Bram Stoker's Dracula's story.
Oh, okay. That's not a good idea.
They shoehorn that in. That's part of the Castlevania lineage.
We need to go horning in other kind of Dracula stories here.
Oh, they do it. They do it. So
yeah, and their daughter was Buffy Summers, and she.
There are 2 other Castlevanias taking place during World War I and World War II. I kind of just highlighted these. World War I is Castlevania Bloodlines and Genesis. John Morris from Bram Stoker's Dracula. He ends up fighting Dracula's niece, and then World War II. On the right side, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin on the Game Boy Nintendo DS. He's John's son, Jonathan, fights Dracula as well during World War II. And so, here comes Turbo Castlevania in 1999 AD.
Wow.
Alright, so follow me with this. A solar eclipse that Nostradamus predicted ends up resurrecting Dracula. So Alucard and Julius Belmont end up teaming up to stop Dracula. So what happens is Julius Belmont storms the castle with the help of the militarized Hakuba clan to trap and kill Dracula. It's this massive military, magical vampire fight in modern times. This game does not exist.
Oh, it's too bad.
Yeah, it's part of the storyline. It's modern times. It's in Japan. Crazy stuff could happen. They have yet to make this game. But this is part of what kind of bridges the gap between the previous games and the modern games.
But it's part of the canon, even though it's not an actual game?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, that one does not exist. And so flashing forward then, the Castlevania Area of Sorrow on the Game Boy Advance, 2035 AD, 30 years later. So high school kids Soma Cruz and Mina Hakuba are off to visit the Shrine of White Horse. They're visiting the shrine. It happens to be during the same time of a solar eclipse. And so when they visit the White Shrine, randomly they get teleported to Dracula's castle. So then Soma fights off the monsters. Mina gets injured almost immediately. Soma is able to fight off the monsters that approach them, and along the way Soma is also able to capture the souls that he's fighting off. But then Soma journeys to the castle to fight cult leader Graham Jones. When Soma actually confronts Graham in the throne room, he learns that Soma himself has actually been declared to be the host of Dracula. That's why he's able to absorb the hosts or the souls that he was killing along the way. It's kind of like a Star Wars, what was that Knights of the Old Republic kind of twist, that you are the bad guy.
Interesting, okay.
And then, so Soma, at the end, Soma and his friends escape from the castle, and the bottom right, yes, of course, the castle does indeed crumbles. And then last but not least is Dawn of Sorrow, 1 year later. So Konami cashes in quickly on a sequel taking place exactly 1 year later after the previous game. Soma, again, is taunted by cult leader Celia Fortner to go into Dracula's castle. Celia is hoping that if she can kill Soma there, that'll resurrect Dracula. Celia instead is killed by a random cult member. That cult member ends up getting turned into Menace. So you see in the bottom right there's some giant thing. It's like, I don't know, something from Contra 3 or something.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But then Menace, Soma has to fight Menace at the end. He does, kills Menace, and Soma goes home.
Okay, so Soma gets teased to go to the castle by Celia, and then so Soma does, and then Celia goes too and gets killed, and Soma kills everybody and goes home.
Correct.
Alright,
that's it. That's the whole game.
That's interesting, yeah. It's interesting, like, motivation for a protagonist. They teased me, so I had to go kill everybody.
So what's next? So you mentioned Lord of Shadow to me. So Lord of Shadow 1 takes place before all of them, before Lament of Innocence in 1036 AD. It takes place way before all of them. Story of Gabriel.
Yeah.
And by Lord of Shadow 2, Gabriel has become Dracula and takes place over 1,000 years, effectively retconning the entire series. So Lord of Shadow 1 and 2 just completely replace the entire Castlevania series I just described to you.
Yeah, I guess it would. It just wipes all that mythology out and starts over with a new one.
I should mention Order of Ecclesia is a Nintendo DS game. It happened sometime in the 1800s. Nobody knows exactly what date. It doesn't star Belmonts at all. Dracula is part of the game. You play as Order member of Order of Ecclesia Shinoa. She does stop Dracula in the process of coming back, and most importantly, Castle does crumble in order.
Oh god.
So, in overall, that is a summary of Castlevania, the series. All however many games that is, from 70, 80 to 2035 AD to 1,000 years of Castlevania games. That's what you got.